Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Friday Flip-thru. Today's book is called Easy Does It Quilt by Georgia Bonesteel. Georgia Bonesteel was, or still is, a quilter who was very popular in the 90s, and she had quilting shows. And I did find some on YouTube, so I will link that for you down in the description box below. So let's take a look at this book. This book is from 1995. Here we see the table of contents with some pictures of Georgia. Here's some life photos, things she enjoyed. I'm sure she still does enjoy them. Some of these quilts are going to be featured here in the book. I like this. This one is very interesting. It's a log cabin quilt. We'll see that in a little bit. This one's also interesting. I think they called it an autograph quilt. In the middle of these stars, there's a rectangle where people can sign their names or put a message. I really like this quilt. It's called Diamond Flowers. These cats are cute. Okay, so this book has some quilt making basics, what you need in order to do quilting. It also tells you some tips on how to sew, how to cut. These are different things you might need to know when you're quilting. How to applique. This one is kind of showing you what it could look like when you do the actual quilting, which is the stitching on the fabric. You could do an outline quilting here. So that's a square, and then this follows the points. Or you can do something more elaborate. Here it tells you how you could do it by machine, how to make bias binding, how to make a hanging sleeve and applying the binding on the end of the quilt. So in this chapter, we'll be looking at these quilts. So this one is called Rodeo Roundup. It is made with novelty type fabrics. Can't see it very well, but there are like small pictures on these. And it's half square triangles. This one is called Baby Cowpoke. More half square triangles, which are, if you are learning how to quilt, is one of the easiest types of quilt to start with. King size. Now I am trying to cover up some of the cutting directions, just because if you want to know how to cut this or how to do this, you would have to buy the book, and I don't want to take that away from the sellers and the creators of the patterns. So that's why I am covering up part of the instructions. I really like this one and the way that it looks like it is interlaced there. This one, it's giving us a a stencil pattern so that we could quilt it after we are done making the quilt. Now this is the one I was talking about. This is a log cabin quilt. And these pieces make it look like they're overlapping or sitting on top of the quilt, which they aren't. It's made to look like that. It's made with regular quilting log cabin quilt blocks, but there's some special ones that you see here that are a little bit thicker. So when you put them together, they make the circles. This one is called the Quilt of Many Friends. And if you see here, there's names and signatures, even some messages. And this would be where you could give these out to your friends or maybe even wedding guests. This would make a great wedding quilt. So you could have the wedding guests write their name in a fabric marker, and then after the wedding, sew up all the names. Now this one is a pillow collection, how to do different pillows. The colors are very 90s, very bright. Telling you how to put the pillows together. This one is called Equilateral Love. So it is a lot of triangles pieced together. These do look like shirts. And this is how it would look put together. And of course it gives us the pattern. Contemporary classics. So these are the quilts we'll be looking at now. Check and double check. I like this here. Something about that intertwining I really like. I need to make a quilt like that. Gives us some of the patterns. And this is for the quilting. So you would sew a bunch of squares on the top of this quilt. Or I'm sorry, sew a bunch of stars on top of this quilt squares. This is a Christmas runner. So it takes that interlocking. This might be something that I do just because I want to try it, but I don't want to make something big and mess it up. Anvil and Stars is what the name of this one is. How to quick piece 4-in-1 flying geese. I always like learning the different ways of doing this. Some people teach it the same, but some people, you know, especially way back when, they had different ways of doing something quickly. This one is Fan Flowers, and it's actually an applique quilt. So we'll see here, it's going to give us some of the, here it is. You would copy these off and then cut them out of the fabric, and then you'd applique them, which means sew them onto the fabric. And it's also giving us these butterfly designs for the actual stitching and quilting. Cat Lovers. This one is super cute. I really like all the little faces coming out of the baskets. So you're not actually making cats, you're making baskets, but you're putting cat faces on them. That's cute. And they're appliqued. Here it's giving us more of the patterns that we can use. This one's kind of different. Now, when I first saw this, I wasn't really sure what it was trying to do, but then when I looked at it closer, these are paint brushes. So you can kind of see the outline of the back of the wooden handle of the brush, and then the square is the tip of the brush. So if you see here, this is the handle of the brush, and then you'd put a different piece of fabric here, and that would be the paint that's on the paintbrush. That's a lot of curves though. I don't know about sewing that many curves. And this is also appliqued. Also, the little paint swooshes are appliqued. This one is very pretty. Diamond flowers. I just like the way it looks. I don't know if I would want to sew that many triangles. Very pretty. Here, giving us some quilting instructions, what they should look like. A novel approach. So these are a little bit different. Let's see. Cuddle quilts. So these are like sample quilts, but instead of being sample blocks, they're sample strips. You see that here. This one's the brighter of the ones. There's some geese strips. There's a little flower. Some of these hourglass. Half square triangles. So there's a lot of different techniques that they made into strips, and then you sew the strips together instead of making them into blocks. Shows you how to make some of them. Spin wheels. So this one's different because you tuck them, and so it gives it a 3D effect. So these are not flat. The middles are not flat. They are tucked up, kind of in an origami way. The next one is called the McAllister McPuff. And these are just, they're puffed up, if you can see here. When you sew these edges together, it's gonna puff the pieces of fabric up. Give it a lot of texture. Spooling around. This is a design that's popular still, even after 27 years. The little thread spools. And this one is using old thread spools as a decoration around it too. It gives us a layout. This one is called the antique bow tie. You can see the little bow ties in the middle here. Made into strips. And some of the patterns for it. Bow tie doll quilt, which is essentially the same thing except using less colors in it, and it is also smaller. Now this is interesting. Back back in the 90s, it was all about making your own clothes, making them your own, adding a little flair. So here we see a bomber style jacket. And what they had done is they cut the back and then they wove strips of cloth to give it that quilted pattern. This, you can see it as a vest. Here they've appliqued different parts onto a vest, a seat made out of ties, warming up to the world. So this one has Ukrainian dolls. They are super cute. They are appliqued. And I believe the faces are sewn on. So you'd have to embroider the faces. Here it gives us pattern for those. And then here it is as a wall hanging. And that's one thing I like is, you know, you don't have to make an actual quilt. If you want to, just make it smaller. Make it smaller, make it for your back of your couch. Make it for a placemat, make it for a wall hanging. Does not have to be a large quilt. This one's called Yakety Yak. If you can see here, it looks like two faces. There's the patterns for it. This one's the tartan thistle. This is an applique block. You cut out all the flowers, the thistles, and applique them onto squares. Here it gives you the pattern. And more of that. We have the table topper. You could also make it as a vest. I don't know about this color scheme right here. That is too much for the eyeballs. Quilting around the world, which is awesome. I like using all these fabrics. I would think maybe if you were like a traveler and you travel to different areas, this would be great to get just a small piece of fabric from each area and then make this type of wall hanging. And you can say, oh yeah, I got that one in Bali, and I got this one in Madrid, and I got this one in Australia. And these are the little templates for that. Tuxedo Friendship. So it's like a wedding ring or double wedding ring. They look linked. I think this would look great if it was in two different color schemes, like maybe a gray and a black. There could be a way to, so that it's not so busy, to add the different, make it look a little bit more 3D-ish, I think. It's still beautiful. So instead of having it like this, maybe do like a dark gray on one side so that it looks like it's coming up and then coming out the other way. I don't know. Very interesting though. And I did get this book at my local thrift store / secondhand store. I'll see what the price was here in a second. A gallery. It's a great inspiration. I really like these mountains here. Some happy little mountains with a happy little stream. This one's made out of ties that are the sunbeams. And of course here on the top you can see little tie bits. This one's another mountain, but with different florals. And that is it for this book. Let me see. I paid $2.99 for this book. Okay. So hopefully that will give you some inspiration. And thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.